hooked after that? Are they lifelong hunters?
I would say most of them, yeah, you know what I mean? They want to go. Is once you get that opportunity to go, and especially, where we hunt in southern Iowa, it's kind of like the holy grail of deer hunting in the entire world. It's such a unique opportunity. I mean, people from all around the world pay crazy amounts of money to go down there and hunt these world-class deer, and these young kids and their parents and our coaches, we all get to go down there um, and spend time together. It's a really a unique thing.
Why was it important to combine the wrestling element, which we know develops a person in a unique way, but also some of the life skills and everything that goes with it? Why was it important to have that formula for you?
For me, it was because of the way that I was raised and the way that the kids that I grew up with were raised. For us, it was always about like you got to be tough in wrestling, and like we talked about, it's so demanding to be good at this sport that to have something that's a release is such an important thing. I mean, my dad taught me from a young age you got to know the difference between when your dad is being your dad and when he's being your coach. And then, Pablo Ibasa and Mark Ryland and those guys, that coached me over the years really, helped that as well. And it stayed important all the way through to do things with our wrestling friends that, that we trained so hard together that, we had to have fun together as well. That didn't include wrestling. I'm a firm believer that it can't be wrestling 24/7. You got to have something else that, you're passionate about, so that you can relax, and that it doesn't have to be hunting. It just so happens to be that I think hunting's an important thing. I told the kids the other night we took a pretty bad, in most people's eyes, state finals loss with one of our kids on Saturday night, and you know everybody's asking, well, what's he think? What's this about? Blah blah. And I said, we came home and me and went for a walk in the woods to look for deer antlers, and I told the kids I was like, there's something about the outdoors that just heals you. You put your cell phone down, you walk outside, you get fresh air in your lungs, and the sun hits your face. You forget about losing a wrestling match when you're in the outdoors. That's for me. It's freedom. It's you're away from the noise of the world, and you get to be in a very relaxed, raw form of what's left in this world.
You have a lot of high level kids in your program, but how do we make sure that we take care of those kids that probably aren't going to go on to college or wrestle D1? How do we make sure they have a great experience in the sport so that they keep moving on and do good things?
I think you got to let them know that you care about them. That was the other thing that we talked about in our club right after districts and going into state. I had a bunch of our high school kids in, and like you said, we're fortunate here at Big Game to have a lot of nationally ranked kids and kids that people know their names, but there's a whole nother group of them, the majority of them, that are kids that fall in a different category, and you got to let them know that their accomplishment is just as important. We had one kid that he didn't qualify for the grade school state last year as an eighth grader, and I'll never forget the kid being dejected and just was down on himself, and he just wasn't physically mature enough at that time, was a little bit softer than the other kids. And we just talked about that, to just keep working hard. And a year later, the kid qualifies for the Iowa High School State Tournament as a freshman. I mean, that accomplishment doesn't go unnoticed at Big Game. You know what I mean? That's something that I don't take lightly. I want to see the progress in those kids. And it's not all about winning. It's not just about a state championship. I mean, us as wrestlers should respect everybody that does this work. Everybody works hard. You know what I mean? It's just some guys, probably do a little bit more or have physical attributes. Some kids don't have that. And I think that that's an important reminder in a club. And that's why for like our club, we take every kid. It isn't that we're just going to take the best kids and we don't care about the rest. We take every single kid. I don't care if you've never won a wrestling match in your life. I mean? We're going to help you try to get better. Those are some of the best feelings in this sport, is when you get to coach a kid that wins their first wrestling match, a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old. You know what I mean? We had a kid this year that his dad told me that last year that he won 2 matches. Well, this year he won like 25. You know what I mean? Like there's your success. It doesn't have to be a Fargo national title or a cadet world team. You know, you got kids that are going to fall in different categories, and it's important to let them know that you see what they're doing as well, because that's just as important as a kid like Hunter Garvin who gets invited to all these big events. You know what I mean? It's just, some kids might take a little bit longer. You don't know when they're going to have their breakout moment, so you got to reward them with positivity.
As far as the hunting goes, do you ever have kids, probably kids who've never done it before, that show up and just hate it, or feel bad for the animals, or whatever reason they're like just not into it?
Um, I've had kids that, that have been on the fence about if they want to do it or not. You know what I mean? So that's pretty standard, I guess. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That if a kid grows up in a family that hasn't done that, you know what I mean? And you would
Right.
hope as an outdoorsman, and like for me, like I appreciate those kids that have empathy for the animal, because it's not about going out and killing an animal. I mean, there's so much that goes into that, and uh, kid that's had a bad feeling after it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we've had some kids that have been invited that, it just wasn't their thing, so to speak. But those kids, then they get a fishing opportunity. If they don't, it doesn't matter if they don't want to, harvest an animal. They can jump on a four-wheeler and, have a bunch of fun slinging mud around on their buddies, or jumping in a pond and going swimming. There's a lot of different outdoor activities that we can do.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Kyle, when are we gonna get out there and go ride these four wheelers and take down some animals?
I know I haven't gotten the invitation yet. I keep waiting for Dylan to reach
Hey,
out.
you
I mean,
guys,
this is
you guys come out whenever. We got our youth turkey hunt that'll be coming up here in April, in May. That's a ton of fun when we get all those kids down there and everybody cooks and hangs out, and it's pretty relaxed feeling. You guys are always more than welcome.
Is it like
I
is it
mean,
camping? Do you guys camp when you do this?
So we have a couple houses down there, but we pull our big camper down there and have the kids stay in the camper, and yeah, we grill out, and it's it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
I mean, Mark, it sounds like a mini flow film almost, doesn't it?
Yeah, like,
Like
Yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah.
there you go. You're
film
on to
you,
something there,
film you
Kyle.
hunting, Mark. That'd be awesome.
Couple non-country boys. Not that I'm a city
Yeah,
slicker, but I'm not a country boy.
That's all right. We'll get you
yeah.
some camo and paint your face and all that kind of
There
stuff.
you go. I ain't scared to get dirty.
There you go.
I got
Yeah.
boots.
Make sure that hair doesn't get in the way of your shot, though, Mark. You got to make sure that.
Well, do you guys have hair gel and hair dryers down there?
But yeah, somewhere we can probably find one. I can get my wife to hook you up.
No gel. No gel for me.
Now, you got to tell us about this facility, the Tom Lepic Complex. I see that in the background there. This is an amazing facility. It's world class. How'd you guys get this built?
So we were at lunch one day and we knew about this building up here in North Liberty, and a guy his son was actually in the wrestling club told us, he's like, hey, that building's for sale up there still. He goes, you guys do know it has a second level in it? And he like made a joke. He was like, it'd be perfect for a wrestling room. And I was like, I looked at my dad and I was like, did you know that there was a second level? And he was like, no. So that was like 1 o'clock on a Friday. By 2:30 we had gotten a meeting set up and we were in this building, and I was like a kid in a candy shop. I walked in and I could just see everything, right? This has been what I'd worked hard for my whole life, and what I dreamed of since I started the club is I wanted a facility like this. And I just told my dad, I was like, if we can get this, I'll raise the money, I'll do the rest to get the wrestling facility done. So we bought it, me, my dad, my brother, the building. And then I went to a guy named Tom Lepic, who has been instrumental in wrestling and in the community here in the Iowa City area, for a long, long time. He was really close with Mark Ryland. And while we were all at West High, he supported us. And so I just went and had a conversation with him and told him about, my dream of big game and having a place where kids can come and train, and, to get this area to the next level, so to speak, in my mind. And I just told him, I was like, we need a little bit of help to get things really fast forward. And it was a pretty quick conversation. If you know Mr. Lepic, he's literally one of the most caring guys in the entire world. He told me, he stood up, gave me a hug, told me he loved me, and we were off to the races. And then me, my brother, and a few other people inside the club, we built, it's about a 13,000 foot facility within inside of our, where our business is here. We got almost 4 wrestling mats. We got a full weight room, a full cardio room, locker rooms, sauna, the lounging area where I'm at with TV, so we can watch FloWrestling and meets and stuff like that. Just hang out. We got an apparel set up here with all of our Nike stuff. It's we wanted to do it different. And in my mind, this was the first facility in the state of Iowa. It's definitely probably the nicest. And we aim to continue to build that. We want to have the nicest facilities in the country.
You had me at sauna.
There you go. Yeah, you should see this thing. That was the most important part. Kyle's seen it. It's big. It's nice, and it gets super hot.
That's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
With it being a nonprofit, and you said no kid gets left behind. Of course, there's expenses. You got to pay the utility bills. There's things that come with it. How does that get paid for?
So we have a banquet every year, and this year it's June 10th. And we raise all the money for the entire year in one night.
Wow.
Last year we had about 500 people there. We give away guns and hunting trips and wrestling memorabilia and all kinds of stuff. I mean, 4-wheeler last year, an elk hunt in New Mexico. We've given away mountain lion hunts, fishing trips in Montana, Alaska, all over. And we just, with our businesses here in the Iowa City area and how much people love wrestling in the state of Iowa, we're lucky that we get a group of people that will come. I mean, to 500 people to come to a kids wrestling club. I mean, there's
Amazing.
colleges that would love to have the support that we have. And we feel very fortunate that with our community support to be able to raise that kind of money in one night is incredible. And we have some long-term goals of to continue that and upgrade even.
Not sure a lot of people know this, but your brother-in-law is TJ Seabolt, who owns Seabolt Wrestling Academy in Jefferson, Iowa. So you have a big one in North Liberty. He has one in Jefferson. How do you guys work together to come up with ideas and advance wrestling in the state?
We've talked quite a bit. Basically, it's just to keep competing against each other and to make our clubs as tough as we can, while continuing to, make sure everybody understands that we are family and we get along. That's always the question that people are like, well, how does that work? Right. They think that there's this big, rivalry. Well, there's not, what I mean? It's just that we want to win. TJ wants to win. We've talked about doing some things together, some dual teams, stuff like that. It's just, train the best kids we can, compete hard, and we'll see what happens, who comes out on top. But I know that TJ makes the state of Iowa a lot better. He made our club better. He sets the tone for, a lot of things that need to be done with good, hard wrestling. And we're really appreciative to get to compete against Seabolt. And I'm appreciative to have him as a brother-in-law because he makes me better as well.
Having an opportunity to watch the interviews and be part of the interviews at the Iowa State tournament, there was a trend there of thanking the club coaches. You had a lot of guys that were state champions, and so did TJ. How has club wrestling influenced high school wrestling and put it on a different trajectory?
Yes, it's incredible. You look at the state of Iowa right now and how many great clubs there are. It's remarkable, because I remember when I was young, I started in what I consider the first real kids wrestling club in the state of Iowa, which was Pablo Ibasa's club. And you look at all the coaches in Iowa that have clubs, well, most of them wrestled for Pablo. Pablo is kind of like the Dan Gable of kids wrestling. When you look at across the state of Iowa and even across the country, how many guys wrestled for Pablo that now have their own clubs or have had their own clubs. It's brought the level of wrestling up really high. Now, one thing that I think that's helped the state of Iowa in the last few years is, like when I moved back to Iowa City, there's 10 clubs right in this area. Maybe that's too much. So I think, that the dominance of a few clubs taking over some areas has helped with the level of wrestling. Getting more kids in the same clubs has been a big deal. And having the high level coaches come back to the club wrestling. And then, you can't underestimate like the college coaches helping the clubs as well, you know what I mean? Because they benefit from it. And those guys, being able to come in and recruit and help clubs, it makes wrestling such an important detail in a lot of these kids' lives, and the little kids, they learn to love it, more than just being in a school club where it's 3 months a year. They get to be in these wrestling rooms year round. They have facilities that they can hang out at. You know what I mean? Like in our wrestling room, when there's kids here almost nonstop during the day, people coming in and out, and on the weekends, kids hanging out, playing video games and stuff like that. It's a retreat for them, and I think it helps kids love wrestling a lot more. And, when you build a relationship with your club coach, to the point of where it really is like a friend or a family member, when it's all said and done. You got to think, most of these kids start with us, between 5 years old and 10. Well, they're going to spend 10 years plus with you. By the time it's all said and done, you've spent their entire lives with them. And that's why, as a club coach, you have to be careful about a lot of things that you say to these kids and the way that you act and whatnot, because you're influencing a young kid's life. And that's not insignificant detail to tell an 8-year-old how he should act and carry himself, because you're shaping the rest of their life as well. You're helping mold their brain, you know what I mean? And you got to do that in respect to their parents as well, because there's wrestling and then there's life. And, we try to do a balance of that. And I think that that's part of what has grown wrestling in the state of Iowa. I mean, you look at a kid like Wyatt Volker and you walk around the state tournament and hear what people say about him. He's a great wrestler, but he's learned some life skills from, his club, from his community, from his high school coaches and his parents that are very, very important.
How do you, what's your, your, not your take on parents? How do you handle parents? And there's lots of different types of parents, right? There's the ones who are a little too involved. There's maybe the ones who aren't involved enough. There's the ones that say, take my kid, whatever, you got to not rough them up, right? You got to yell at them or discipline them. You can do it. And I don't know, like, are parents allowed in the room? Is there an overall philosophy with you and or your club on how to handle or deal with parents, or the best way to?
So again, like growing up in a club, I seen like our parents were allowed to sit in there. I seen some crazy things happen.
Right.
Of parent, coaching from the side and things like that. Kids getting screamed at, like, I mean, all the wild stuff, right? In our club here, I have a zero tolerance for, anything that is out of line. If parents are yelling at their kid because they got scored on, you're gone. See ya. You know what I mean? But like you brought your kid to us for a reason, so let us coach, right? But with the same token, and I might, probably upset some people with this, is like, if you're charging someone for a service, they should be allowed to be in the room, is my opinion. They should get to see it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't go to someone's house and do a landscaping job and then tell them they can't look at it. You know what I mean? That's kind of crazy to me. But with that comes a respect from the parents. Have to understand to be quiet and to do their thing as well. And, actually it's funny because TJ did an interview a while ago that I heard him say something that I thought was really good. He said the only thing that a parent's allowed to judge during a practice is their effort. Don't keep score. I mean, that's
Right.
the biggest thing, like, I saw when I was a kid, and even now I see some of our parents, I see them, like, cringe when they're watching their kids, and I'm just like I just start laughing. I mean, and if you knew me better, you would understand, like, I just call it how I see it, especially in practice. I'll make fun of parents and stuff and be like, "Dude, chill out. Your kid gave up a takedown. He didn't lose the Olympics tonight."
He's
You know what I
6.
mean? Right, exactly, like, stuff like that. But, the other thing that I think that helps of having the parents in the room, all right, we have a big club. We have lots of coaches. There's still kids that every once in a while you miss. You can't get to the back gym. You can't go to the Sunday tournament in Tiffin, Iowa or something, you know what I mean? Where those parents need to know how to communicate to their kids is being taught in here. You know what I mean? Some people call, a move one thing. A big game, we call things a lot of different things, and that's kind of a coaching tactic, if you will. But I want my parents to understand why we call a move something or what we call something, so that they can help their kids if in the event that we're not there. I think it's important.
Absolutely.
You mentioned some of the names that one state, and it's interesting because it's not just Iowa City West or the Iowa City area. You had Linn-Mar, you had Iowa City West, you had West Delaware. How do you get such a diverse range of people to come to your club?
I think that it's been a lifetime of growing up in the state of Iowa and being, you know, a a, a passionate person about wrestling and a community member. I was so fortunate to be involved with Mark Ryland for as long as what I was, that he helped me build this network, and my dad and Pablo and all these guys that I know people from all over the state. And we're just lucky that I have relationships in communities where people trust what we're doing and believe in what we're doing. There's kids that drive a couple hours every single night to work
Wow.
out here, and that's a very, very difficult thing for some people to do. But when people are putting that kind of effort in, you got to give it back as a coach too. I mean, that's where you understand what it means to someone that's doing that. And again, it's not insignificant to be in that kid's corner when they care about it that much.
You've mentioned Mark Ryland often, and I think it's worth pausing here to talk more about him. He passed away recently. He was the Iowa City West head coach, 1991 NCAA champion for Iowa. What was he all about? What did he bring to your career and your life?
Mark Ryland was instrumental. I mean, to the state of Iowa, to Iowa City, to the University of Iowa, to USA Wrestling on the national level. I mean, obviously, we all understand that. What Mark taught all of us was confidence, and that's a big thing that we talk about in our room. And um, it's an emotional topic for me, for being Mark's probably the closest person that's ever died to me personally. And so I've had a lot of time to reflect here recently, and I'm super lucky because Coach Ryland took us in at a young age, and we got to learn from him for so long that I learned how to be a competitor. I learned how to be a confident person around him. Um, and then I learned how to be a coach. I would have to say that probably the two most influential people in my coaching career are Doug Schwab and Mark Ryland. That I've had more conversations with those two guys about how to coach. And, me and Coach Ryland had a conversation right before he passed. That was probably the most profound conversation that me and him ever had. And it was him reflecting on some things that he said and did and with us back in the day, that he said he didn't understand why he did it. And it kind of shaped us into being these hardcore guys that, that, winning wasn't just enough. You wanted to dominate and do all these things. And he just kind of talked to me about, like, do what you're doing, like with the hunting and the wrestling club, and like make it fun. He's like, because eventually you are going to be 30 and you're going to be sitting here talking to your high school wrestling coach in your gym. And he's like, you want to have good feelings about everything. He kind of came full circle in a lot of senses. He was a manager of us boys for a long time. And, he really ended up being more like a second dad to a lot of us. And we just, it he's gone way too soon, but we were just super fortunate. Anybody that really knows how close we were with Mark, that we were like his sons. He didn't have kids of his own. We were his boys. And that's why, we all kind of joke around about the West High Bad Boys thing. And Mark started that. I mean, he was the original West High Bad Boy. He taught us how to do it, right?
I never understood Mark Ryland's personality. Would you fill us in on who he was? And he kind of had a quirky sense of humor, but explain his personality if you can.
Oh man, I don't even know depends on how much time we have, right? Mark was such a unique guy. I think the main thing is that people sometimes perceive Mark, especially when we were winning so much at West High and we had these, top 10, top 5 national teams and kids were moving in and stuff. People like loved to hate him at that time because he was quiet and he walked in a certain way, that people took as arrogant. What they didn't understand is that Mark was like the most caring guy in the entire world. Like he cared about his athletes so much. I mean, that the guy owned his own business and would drive us all across the country just just to help us. Like that's the main thing that kind of guy was. Now, with that said, is he had this wild sense of humor that most people don't understand. Was this like him being like kind of mean was the way that he messed with us. And there's just like the most famous thing like that most people don't know about, and you have to talk to the guys my age, is the ring, right? It's like when you started messing with Mark and he didn't like wrestle you back. He just had this state championship ring and you get one right on the top of the head. And like that's like Mark like messing with you, you know what I mean, is to walk up and knock you on the head with his ring and watch you hurt a little bit, you know what I mean? That was kind of him messing with us but making us tougher and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he just he was radiant, in a lot of ways and infectious to be around just with his confidence and, being a legend in the sport of wrestling as a national champion for Iowa and then the leader of USA Wrestling. And then look at how high he went in the national ranks of USA Wrestling. I always tell people, I thought, before he passed, I was like, Mark will be the president of USA Wrestling someday, you know what I mean? And I took a lot of pride in that because, I've got myself into some situations at wrestling tournaments where, I probably could have got red carded or something. I'm like, well, if I do, Ryland will get me out of it.
Oh, that's great.
I'm glad we get to end on talking about Mark Ryland. Before we let you go, we have a game called Sweat It Out. I have 5 questions I'm hoping to make you sweat like your
Yep.
sauna. You ready to play?
Yes,
All right,
sir.
number 1. Who wrote the song Like a Rolling Stone and made it famous?
Ooh. I don't know, Mick Jagger. I don't know.
Bob Dylan.
There you go.
Bob Dylan.
Our first miss of the week,
My
Kyle.
dad's probably watching this, sitting in his office, like he should have known that.
All right, number 2. What Major League Baseball player had 3,053 career hits with the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels?
Rod Carew.
Yep. Man, I'm going to stump you on that. All right. I think this is I threw this in just to be really tough, but we'll see. What American actor earned a Golden Globe for his role in the television show The Practice and was the narrator for the 2002 ESPN series called The Season about Iowa Hawkeye wrestling?
Oh man, I love that. The season's like the coolest thing in the entire world,
Amazing.
right?
It was great.
I'm
Yes.
trying to think of the voice and who it is. I don't know, I guess, off the top of my head.
His name is Dylan McDermott.
Huh. I like the theme, Kyle.
But you got the Dylans wrong. Both
Yeah,
Dylans
I know.
are wrong. All right. Number 4. Who is named the only D1 head wrestling coach from Montana?
Brandon Eggum, great guy.
Yep.
Great guy.
And number 5. Who is the only Iowa football player to win Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL?
Say it again.
Okay. Who is the only Iowa football player to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year?
Aaron Campman or Jared DeVries?
Nope. Bob Sanders.
Huh. All right. Yeah. He was from when I was a kid. He was a safety, right? He was a bad dude.
He was a safety. Yeah, he was tough. I ratcheted it up a little bit. They said the questions this week were a little too easy.
I was going to use the same word. You ratcheted it up. Our first two guests this week went 5 for 5, and at the end of the show yesterday, we said, Kyle, you got to make it a little tougher next time. Of course, don't dare Kyle, because
I didn't pass.
I apologize, Dylan. It would have made more sense. Kyle, half the time he sits in a instead of a Larry Bird jersey in the background, there's a Bob Dylan poster, so it would have made sense.
There you go.
You know, lead a horse to water, like show him subliminally.
That's the only reason I got the Rod Crew. I probably would have guessed Pete Rose before that, but
yeah, I helped him on that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, man. Okay, one more game, Dylan. You got a minute?
Yep.
Okay, this is called Wins and Whoopings. All right, so if you think back over the span of your career, we're looking for one win that stands out as memorable. Your favorite win, your best win, comeback overtime victory in 4th grade. I don't care what it is. And then one loss that really we're looking for, like stories of getting your ass kicked, right? Everybody's taking one, at least a whooping. Everybody's got probably multiple whoopings, but one time you wrestled somebody and they kicked your ass so bad you came off the mat and you just thought, what happened? Is this real life? And then one win that sticks out as memorable. This can be from any point in your entire wrestling career. You can answer either one first.
The losses obviously stick out a lot.
Everybody says that.
Anything. I think if you're a true competitor, you expect to win, right? So you don't want to. You want to act like you've been there before. Right. I won Fargo a couple times. That was incredible. In state, winning an Iowa high school state title and standing up there getting a smile, that's pretty awesome. There was a win when I was in 8th grade. I know how crazy this sounds, but I beat a kid in Tulsa that I wasn't sure maybe that I was in his league. And when I beat this kid, that kind of really started a lot of really good things for me. And I've talked about that before in my club that, you just don't know when that's going to happen. For me, it was this win in 8th grade that I remember that all of a sudden I thought I was the guy, right? Like all the time. I never expected to. I knew I was in for a formidable fight with this kid, and he took me down a couple times right away, maybe 3 times. And all of a sudden I saw him get tired. And he was from Oklahoma. I'm from Iowa. So it was like this big deal, right?
Yeah.
And I ended up beating him. And I just remember my dad telling me, he's like, well, now you can beat anyone, because this kid had won Tulsa like all these times. I mean, that was pretty awesome. On the mat, or you want practice room?
I mean, whatever's more memorable. You can do either.
Practice room, Montel Marion, when I was a freshman at Iowa, was one of the wildest stories / beatings I've taken. I remember Montel was a lot older than me. I'm a true freshman, just came off of ACL surgery, and I go out to wrestle him, and I take him down, might even have thrown him to his back, but I scored a bunch of points right away. Well, those were the only points I scored because Montel got up and I was tired already. And Montel, that guy had a gas tank. He could just go and go and go. And he was the kind of guy that'd always be like, one more takedown. Well, that happened. And I was like, I remember leaving that day going, I'm never letting that happen again. Well, the next day I walked in and I was like, all right, Montel, we're going again. And the next day was a lot more formidable, but it ended in a fist fight. So it was kind of not a short one. It was like a 15-minute one, intervention of coaches and all kinds of stuff. The coaches made me walk out basically hand in hand with Montel. And I remember we got up to the parking lot upstairs and I'm like, all right, we're going to fight again. And, it all stemmed from this beating I took the day before. And I remember getting upstairs and Montel reaching his hand out and going, all right, man, I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. You know what I mean? Because I was so upset about the beating he gave me the day before. I was still ready to fight,
He's like,
and I never been shy of that. And then I guess the competition loss that strikes me right now, I guess, was Fargo Finals, Dylan Alton. It was when they had 3 periods. And I outscored him, and he won the match. And I remember telling Ryland, like, this is dumb. Like, how do you outscore someone by like triple the amount of points and lose the match? So those ones were, that's the match and the practice, I guess.
Yeah. That's cool. And Montel's like, hey, we got a whole year. All right, we don't need to fight here in the bucket. Like,
Oh, dude,
we'll do it again tomorrow and the next day and the
Well,
next day.
and that's the thing. He was an older guy, but what was funny and and great about Montel at that time is that I got his respect. Right, I was just this little freshman, but I wasn't scared to fist fight him. I wasn't scared to fist fight anybody. It was just I had to do it to get his respect, and I came back a couple days in a row, and the next thing you know, me and Montel were pretty good buddies in college. He's a pretty solid guy.
That's great. That's great, man. And it's been awesome hearing the stories about your club and the ties to hunting and the building in the second floor and seeing it everything. And I just really appreciate you coming on here and chatting with us. But we want to give you the final word. If there's anything you want to say about anything before we let you move on with your day.
I just appreciate you guys having me on. I was lucky enough to get to go to Who's Number One this year. That was a great event. I appreciate you guys supporting our club by having kids from Big Game come there, and just look forward to everything that you guys do. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Dylan. Have a great day, and the best of luck to you and your club in the future.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, Kyle, we got to get you suited up, get a gun in your hand or a bow. Would you rather shoot or bow hunt?
Bow hunting for sure.
Bow hunting. Okay.
Yeah. That sounds more fun.
Seems like it would be a lot harder.
Oh, I would be. No doubt about it, but there's something fascinating about it. I'd like for us to go down there. I'd like to see you out on a hunt there with the big game hunting in southern Iowa. I think it'd be great. Film you doing it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's find a time, make it happen. Bandana around my
Do
head, camo, war paint. Ready to go. I think the closest I've done is like paintballing. It's like the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
Sure. All right. Well, cool. This has been a lot of fun, but that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. For Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Bader. We'll see you next time.